Dear revered Brother Nexus, High Prophet of the True Queen, I hope this letter finds you well, Brother Nexus, for I have both good and bad news that needs to be brought to your attention. First, in regards to your orders, our search of the Everfree Forest is still ongoing. We have yet to find any real traces of our queen, and recently, even the lingering portions of her aura at the ancient castle have dissipated. But this past evening I became aware of a filly that has been living in town that bears, if I may say, a striking resemblance to our queen. The filly in question, Nyx, is currently in the care of Twilight Sparkle. Yes, the same Twilight Sparkle that we are all so familiar with. When I first saw her at an elementary school play, and I saw her a second time that evening when she shared a meal with Twilight Sparkle, the princesses, and a number of other local mares and fillies. After speaking with my daughter, who has shared a class with the filly for a number of weeks, I've come to discover that the filly was admitted as a new student to Ponyville Elementary around the same time as our spell was cast, near the beginning of spring. While the news alone is promising, I have been unable to learn anything else. Due to an incident which has made worse thanks to my darling wife, I am now at odds with Twilight Sparkle. Also, my daughter, who might have proved useful in this matter, has made herself just as unwelcome around the Golden Oaks Library. Thus, I am reaching out for your guidance, Brother Nexus, in how you wish for me to proceed. I patiently await your reply. For the Eternal Night, for Equestria's True Queen. Honored Brother Rich, Prophet of Ponyville. The scroll had been hoof-delivered to the manor, lay across the desk in Spell Nexus's study. Nexus himself was standing near one of his windows, horn glowing as he held a glass of fine orange juice. He gently swished the glass, and its contents danced under the gentle motions. His turquoise eyes focused on the moon, which was a beautiful crescent in the sky. A filly, Nexus whispered to himself before sipping from the glass. A filly who attends school, who lives with Twilight Sparkle, who has seen in the presence of Princess Celestia, no less. A filly who participated in a school play of all things. A filly. It is not what I expected. What are your plans? Your schemes? Nexus asked, as if posing his questions to the moon itself. Do you act to keep your enemies close? Do you seek to find a weakness to exploit? Do you bide your time until you can overcome the elements of harmony and the ponies who wield them? Nexus drank the glass again, draining every drop. The glow from his horn grew just a little brighter as he took hold of a large, elegant pitcher from a nearby table. From it, he poured more orange juice and filled his cup. He then resumed swishing the contents of the glass as he set the pitcher down and returned to the window. Perhaps you are merely waiting for us, your children, to discover you. Is that your plan, my queen? Do you wish us to prove ourselves capable and deserving of your grace? Nexus mused, crossing the room. Though, I assume much taking filthy rich from his word. This filly may resemble Nightmare Moon, but a resemblance is not enough. No doppelganger will do. Nexus sighed as he neared his reading table, on which he set down his glass. In any case, this warrants further investigation. A book floated out from the shelves, gripped by Nexus's magic. Yet what Nexus sought was tucked behind it. It was a small black book, which floated from its hiding place in the shelves. Nexus then returned the first book to its place while his magic laid the small one out on the writing desk. Nexus opened the book, revealing pages filled with the names etched into his own handwriting. It was the only true record of the children of the Nightmare. The only record of all the ponies who had sworn their strength, magic, and life to the return of Equestria's true queen. It was his duty alone to guard such precious information, for if such a list were to be found by Celestia, all their hopes would be lost. As his turquoise eyes flowed across the names, Nexus began to ponder what his next move would be. He would need agents that could travel to the small town of Ponyville and verify Filthy Rich's reports. He would need ponies he trusted, ones like Greygale, Nightwind, and Stonewall. He would need ponies who were not just honored brothers and sisters, but ponies among the exalted, those who were just below him in the order. He, the one and only revered brother of the children of Nightmare. Other books began to make their way off the shelves, cradled by levitation magic, as Nexus began checking information. Every move made the children of the Nightmare had to be planned with such care, for his opponents in this high-stakes game of chess was none other than Celestia herself. He faced a mare with 1,000 years of rule and wisdom behind her, a mare who has unearthed less thoroughly thought-out plans during the cult's infancy. He'd watch his agents like a fine powder, sprinkling them amongst the ponies in Ponyville. They'd start by simply watching. Then others would try to get closer so they could get samples of her magic and her nature, and then... Sir... Nexus looked up from his work and saw proper etiquette and poked his nose into his study. Yes? Etiquette stepped in through the door and walked over to Nexus. He held out a scroll, which was bound shut with a purple ribbon and a silver full moon seal. There is a letter for you, sir. Thank you, Etiquette, Nexus replied as he took the scroll on his own magic. Will you be needing anything else, sir? Nexus shook his head. No, not at the moment. Very good, sir. With that, Etiquette bowed respectfully before he turned and removed himself from the room. Nexus watched and waited with proper etiquette had left before he began setting down the many books he had pulled from the shelf. He propped open the books on the floor so he could quickly resume his work once the letter had been attended to. The scroll was bound with purple ribbon and a silver seal. It was the letter from a brother or sister. The full moon on the seal indicated it was of the utmost importance. Dear revered Brother Nexus, High Prophet of the True Queen, this is a written report on the comings and goings of the unicorns assigned by Princess Celestia to study and understand the nature of the resurrection spell we attempted. I realize this report comes fairly soon after my last, and that you did not expect it for several days. There have been, however, a few developments I believe you would want to know about without delay. First, with the research team moved to the Royal Archives, our endeavors to understand our spell have started to make steady headway. They have begun to decipher the arcane lines we use to augment and focus magic in the Everfree Forest clearing. While I will act, as I have, to try and stall their efforts, I can at this point only slow their progress. They will, in time, decipher the spell. Second, Princess Celestia came to the research team this morning to check on the progress. They reported to her exactly as I've reported to you, that their progress has now become steady and dependable. Bastion Yoritz and Celestia began to chat casually, the princess talking about the spring festival she attended yesterday evening with her sister in Ponyville. She spoke highly of the many performances and offered particular praise for a play put on by the town's elementary school. At this point, the princess divulged to Bastion Yoritz that her student, Twilight Sparkle, was now taking care of a young filly by the name of Nyx. The only description she offered was that the filly was a black-coated unicorn, and that the filly was also a half-cousin. I would have dismissed this idle chatter if Bastion Yoritz hadn't made a very interesting comment. He divulged that if he had grown up to know Twilight's father, he had even written a letter of recommendation, at the father's request, to help her secure an invitation to take care of an entrance exam for Celestia's School of Gifted Unicorns. In his comments, Bastion admitted it was strange that Twilight had called Nyx a half-cousin. According to Bastion, while Twilight's father had siblings, her mother had been an only child. He further pointed out that Twilight's father and his siblings all share the same two parents, making it impossible that Twilight had any half-cousins. Princess Celestia's reply to this was that Twilight must have misspoken when introducing Nyx, or that she had a misunderstanding of what a half-cousin was. Bastion accepted this answer, and soon their meeting was over. Again, I would have believed this to be nothing but idle chatter. Yet later that day in the barracks, I overheard Princess Celestia's guards privately talking. The two Pegasi were discussing the princess's day, and after eavesdropping for a time, I discovered that the princess made an unscheduled stop on her daily routine. She went to the Equestria Central Records Office during what was supposed to be her lunch hour. From the ponies there, she requested a family record pertaining to Twilight Sparkle to be delivered to her royal chambers this evening. I was unable to discover more, since my shift had ended. and I dare not risk lingering around the castle after work. Thus, this is all I have to report. I will continue observations of the research team, and I will alert you if I discover anything pressing. I will submit my next regular report at the scheduled time. For the Eternal Night, for Equestria's True Queen, Exhausted Sister, Nightwind. Nexus licked his lips to wet his mouth, which had gone dry. The situation had become much more perilous. Just as his attention had been brought to the filly in Ponyville, so had Celestia's gaze. Her interest had been spurred by the blabbermouth Bastion Yoritz. Of course, he would have to have the childhood friend of Twilight's father. Taking up the orange juice glass, Nexus tilted it up to his mouth and drained it with a few swift gulps. He then shook his head, fighting back the brain freeze the chilled juice had incurred before refocusing on the task at hoof. There was now a need for both subtlety and haste. The truth about who the filly was needed to be ascertained before Celestia could act in a way that would make such investigation impossible. The book had been left on the floor, or carried back to the air by Nexus's magic. He drew out a feather pen and several pieces of parchment. Then Nexus began to feverishly work. His eyes moved between the little black record book and many other tomes that now encircled him, and the pieces of parchment he was scrolling partial plans on. Spell Nexus would get no sleep that night. Twilight yawned, making no effort to control or stifle it as she walked down the path to Ponyville Elementary. The sun was still rising from the horizon, and the sunrise tapestries of color was starting to fade into the constant blue of midday. Normally, it would have taken an important research trip to make Twilight get out of bed this early. That was, however, before Nyx came into her life. Now it was not an expedition to some far-off archaeological site or rare celestial event that drew Twilight from her warm bed covers. It was a far simpler event to a certain little filly, but nearly as important. A few days after the spring festival, Shirley announced that she wanted to try something new for the school. It was a Saturday event where the students would set up educational exhibits and the school would host food and games, something Shirley was playfully calling Learn and Play Day. It was an event that had quickly grown. Even Ponyville's schools for older students were more than eager to join in. It was only because the event had grown so quickly that Shirley had called on Twilight, Ponyville's #1 organizer, to help get everything in order. Twilight had been working alongside the teacher for the past 2 weeks to plan the event while the students researched and built their educational exhibits. It had turned into quite a lot of work, but it was worth it. Nyx had only grown more excited to learn that the Learn and Play Day drew closer. Approaching the schoolhouse, Twilight walked around the brightly painted building to the open field behind it. There, Shirley was working with a few other volunteers to get everything set up. Tables, chairs, colorful strings and flags, and numerous signs decorated the grassy field behind the school, making it almost as inviting as the schoolhouse itself. "Good morning, every pony," Twilight greeted. She attempted to put on a smile as well, but it was ruined when she was gripped with another yawn. "Not much for mornings," Shirley teased as she walked over to meet Twilight. Twilight covered her mouth with a hoof and laughed through the end of the yawn. "Not usually, no." "Well, thank you for coming out and giving everyone one last final check before the big day. Everybody seems so excited. This little weekend may turn into a new Ponyville tradition if all goes right." "Well, let's get through today first before we start planning for next year," Twilight said. She opened her saddlebags and floated a checklist with a pencil into the air. "Now, let's see. Are the exhibition tables set up?" Shirley nodded and pointed a hoof to the area just behind the school. Several circular tables had been borrowed or rented from a number of ponies around the town. Each one was covered in a white tablecloth and bore a pair of numbered signs. 30 round tables with tablecloths and 60 exhibit signs on yellow paper." "Perfect," Violet replied. She made a check on her list and started looking around the area the pair were standing in. "What about food?" "We're just about to finish setting up the tables for our food court. Big Mac has brought in a food cart from Sweet Apple Acres, and that just leaves Danver and the cakes, who need to arrive to set up their food stalls." "Danver?"
His family owns and runs the carrot farm next to Sweet Apple Acres.
Oh, Twilight said before she lifted her hoof to her mouth to mask a giggle.
Let me guess. Danver is a type of carrot? You'd be guessing right,
Shirley replied with a chuckle of her own.
Then, I'd say that the food and eating area is all taken care of,
Twilight commented before she checked her next item on her list.
That just leaves the afternoon activities. Still, I doubt we'll be able to mark that one off just yet.
Why do you say that?
Well, we put Rainbow Dash in charge of that. She's reliable, but she likes to procrastinate. I wouldn't be surprised if she was still back at home snoozing away the morning.
Boo! Twilight quickly turned her head to the side, a little startled by the sudden addition of a third voice into the conversation. It was only then that she noticed the sky-blue Pegasus hovering in the air near her head. Shirley had to cover her mouth to keep herself from laughing as Rainbow Dash looked at Twilight with a smug grin.
Back at home snoozing, huh?
Twilight laughed nervously, forcing a smile.
Rainbow Dash, I didn't expect you'd be here this early.
Rainbow chuckled, landing next to Twilight and folding her wings.
Relax, Twi. On any normal day, I would still have been asleep. But this is just going to be too awesome. I just had to get up early, not only to clear the skies, but to make sure all my cool sporting events are ready.
What do you have planned, anyway? Shirley asked. I've been too busy making sure the students' exhibits would be ready to keep up with everyone else that's been going on.
Oh, tons of stuff, Rainbow Dash energetically answered. When I was at Twilight's library last week, I checked out a book with a whole bunch of killer ideas, and now I've got something for every pony. Got things for the kids to do, things for the kids to do with their parents, and things for the parents to do so the kids can cheer them on. We've got some games for Pegasi, for Earth ponies and unicorns, and games where you get to mix it up. It's all just going to be so awesome!
Wow, that sounds like a lot, Twilight said, unable to hide how impressed she was. Rainbow Dash smiled smugly, lifting a hoof and brushing it against her chest.
Yeah, I pretty much outdid myself.
And since we've got so many ponies to volunteer their time and things for free, Shirley began as she reached nearby a table and pulled out a box. I actually was able to spend the last of the budget on some prizes for your... Shirley didn't even have to finish what she was saying. Without a word of warning, Rainbow Dash zipped forward, stuck her head in the box, and began to rummage around inside with a gleeful squeak.
You got prizes?
Yes. Yes, I did.
And good prizes, too,
Dash commented with her head still inside the box.
And there's some choice stuff in here. Ah, cool yo-yos!
At that, Rainbow Dash pulled her head out of the box with the yo-yo pinched gingerly in her teeth. In a flash, its string was around her hoof. Then, with an expert flick, Rainbow Dash sent the little plastic disc into the up and down, the string in a smooth motion. Another flick and the yo-yo was in a simple sleeper trick, where it stayed at the bottom of the string, but continued to spin.
Heh, I used to be pretty good at this,
Dash bragged as she flicked her hoof to bring the yo-yo out of the sleeper trick. Rainbow Dash then gave the toy a few more flicks to build up speed before she wrapped up some of the string around her hooves, resulting in the yo-yo swinging back and forth inside a tangle of string.
This here's called the pendulum.
That's great, Rainbow, but shouldn't you leave the prizes for the ponies who actually win them? Twilight said.
Sure, just one more trick. You heard of Around the World? Well, this is my super double loop around the sun trick.
With that, Rainbow Dash gave the yo-yo a flick, jumped into the air, and used her wings to spin herself. A few seconds after that, Dash flopped to the ground, hogtied in the string. Shirley and Twilight couldn't help but burst out laughing as Dash struggled to free herself from the string.
Oh wow, Rainbow Dash, that was really something,
Twilight deadpanned.
Yeah, laugh it up. Now, are you two gonna just stand there giggling, or are you...
The Learn and Play Day was in full swing the moment it opened at the public at 9 in the morning. The students had set up their exhibits, and each exhibit had been done on a different topic of interest. There were exhibits about farming techniques, about history, about how weather was made, and dozens of other topics that usually caught the interest of school-age fillies and colts. That was the learn part of the Learn and Play Day. The students learned more about subjects they wanted to, and some parents and other ponies in the community had a chance to learn as well.
Isn't this super duper fun, Fluttershy?
Pinkie Pie chirped as she bounced along between the students' exhibits while Fluttershy walked calmly beside her.
I mean, I knew cotton candy was good, and I knew how they made it. Still, I never knew how little pieces of sugar turned into that stringy sweet goodness.
Fluttershy nodded.
Yeah, that was a really interesting display. Which one's been your favorite so far?
Pinkie asked excitedly. Fluttershy shrank slightly under Pinkie's undivided attention.
Well, I liked the one about how caterpillars became butterflies. I already knew about it, but the student did such a wonderful job explaining it. All the kids did a really wonderful job,
Pinkie Pie agreed before her eyes lit up.
Ooh, I wish I could have an exhibit. I would do one about parties.
Fluttershy blinked.
Parties? Parties aren't as easy as everyone thinks. There's a lot of rules I have to follow for my parties. The Pinkie Pie rules,
Pinkie stated matter-of-factly.
Oh?
Fluttershy asked in disbelief, as the pair continued to move through the crowd.
I would never imagine you actually had rules to your parties. Of course. How do you think they turn out so good? I have rules I can never ever break. And as long as every pony else doesn't break them, the party's a guaranteed success. Like rule number 1, every party must have decorations. Or rule number 157, if the ratio of fillies to colts to mares to stallions is at least 1 to 2, there must be a piñata.
Fluttershy couldn't tell but tilted her head to one side and arch an eyebrow.
Rule number 157? How many rules are there? 367.
Fluttershy replied nonchalantly.
Oh. Oh my. That's a lot of rules.
For a brief moment, Pinkie Pie stopped bouncing and her usual happy expression turned stone cold.
Hey, throwing parties is my special talent, and it's a serious business to make them seriously fun.
Pinkie Pie's normal, cheerful demeanor returned a moment later. She then scanned the exhibits, looking for the next one she would visit.
Oh, hey, there's Nyx's booth. We should go see what she did.
Pinkie Pie bounced ahead, forcing Fluttershy to break into a quick trot to catch up. The group of stallions and mares were just stepping away from Nyx's booth when the pair of mares came up.
Hi, Fluttershy,
Nyx said with a wide smile, one that withered a little as Nyx turned to look at the, at times, overwhelming party pony that stood beside Fluttershy.
Hi, Pinkie Pie. Hey there, Nyx,
Pinkie Pie chirped.
What super cool, amazing thing did you do for your exhibit? Give us the whole rundown. If you don't mind, that is,
Fluttershy added, trying to curb Pinkie Pie's enthusiasm.
Of course it's...
Nyx stated before she coughed into her hoof to clear her throat.
I chose to make my exhibit about transconfiguration magic.
Pinkie tilted her head, confused but still excited.
What? Transfiguration. It's the magic that focuses on turning one thing into another.
Nyx pointed at the number of pictures she had set up on the cardboard backdrop of her exhibit.
Transfiguration magic can be used to transform practically anything into anything else. Like a stick into a fancy walking cane, or a stone into a hat, or even an apple into a horse-drawn carriage. Transfiguration magic is only limited by the skill and the ability of the pony casting it. Skilled unicorns, such as Rarity, can use transfiguration to turn fabric into a dress, and Twilight can use transfiguration for common mice into full-sized horses. Hey, I remember that,
Pinkie Pie said with a giggle.
They didn't look exactly like horses.
Nyx stammered a moment, trying to recover from Pinkie Pie's interruption.
And that leads me to the next part of my exhibit, the limits of transfiguration magic. Transfiguration magic is always temporary. Everything transfigured will eventually turn back to normal. This is why anything that needs to be permanent is still hoof-made, like houses and clothing. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a need for construction workers, carpenters, or any other pony to make things. And as a final part of my exhibit, I would like to provide a live demonstration of transfiguration magic.
Nyx pointed to a rock sitting at the table at the center of her exhibit. She then shut her eyes, her horn began to glow, her face contorted with concentration, and she puffed out her cheeks a little as she strained her young magic. After a few tense moments, a small pop and flash of light enveloped the rock, where it was turned into a potted flower.
Ooh,
Pinkie Pie said before she leaned in and sniffed the flower.
it even smells real.
Nyx smiled bashfully.
So, any questions? No, none at all. That was very well done, Nyx. You should be...
Fluttershy began to praise, only for Pinkie Pie to put her head in between Fluttershy and Nyx.
Ooh, I got a question. Have you tried changing anything bigger than a rock? Oh, do you do requests? Well, no.
Nyx stammered.
But I could try. What did you have in mind? Turn that grass into cotton candy,
Pinkie Pie said ecstatically.
No, wait. Turn that into a candy apple. No, wait. You should turn that stallion's bow tie into a squirty flower. No. I know what you should do.
Pinkie Pie was grinning ear to ear as she pointed a hoof at Fluttershy.
Turn her into a tree.
Nyx's head lowered and her eyes flattened as she took a step back from Pinkie Pie and her magic behavior.
A tree? Yeah, turn Fluttershy into a tree. Why would you want me to be a tree?
Asked Fluttershy, looking at Pinkie Pie for her odd suggestion.
Because this one time, on a train, I got talking with Rainbow Dash and Twilight, and for some strange reason, Rainbow thought you were a tree, even though you obviously aren't. And then you said you'd like to be a tree.
Pinkie Pie answered Fluttershy before turning her excited blue eyes towards Nyx again.
So, can you turn into a tree? I don't know. Oh, come on, just give it a try. You never know unless you try.
Pinkie Pie encouraged.
But
Nyx tried to protest.
Come on! Fluttershy doesn't mind. Do you, Fluttershy?
Fluttershy scratched the ground, drawing anxious circles in the dirt.
Well, you do seem really excited, so I guess I don't mind. But are you sure it's safe? We saw Twilight turn mice into horses, and she wouldn't put your animal friends in danger. Well, I guess that's true,
Fluttershy admitted.
And I guess it would be kind of nice to see what it's like. Yay!
Pinkie Pie cheered before she took a look back at Nyx.
So, come on, let's see some of that unicorn magic.
Nyx took a step back, shying away.
Pinkie Pie, I don't know. I don't think Twilight... Ah, come on, please. It'll be so totally fun.
Pinkie Pie pressured as she bounced with excitement.
Pinkie Pie, maybe...
Fluttershy began, trying to tell her friend she was being a little overbearing. However, she didn't finish her sentence as she felt magic wrapping around her. Nyx had shut her eyes and focused her magic into her horn. She was making an attempt at the transfiguration spell, if only to appease the energetic Pinkie Pie.
Boy, some of these boots are really cool,
Rainbow Dash said. She and Twilight were trotting among them.
I mean, did you see what Scootaloo did? He actually explained how my sonic rain boom works. And I didn't even know how it worked, besides the fact that I was breaking the sound barrier.
Yes, all the students have done really, Twilight began, only to be silenced as the ground shook and a loud noise cut through the air.
What was that?
Twilight asked, once she had regained her footing from where it felt like a minor earthquake. When she got no answer, Twilight turned to look at Rainbow Dash, who was staring wide-eyed in the opposite direction. Following Rainbow's gaze, Twilight nearly choked in the air out of her own lungs at what she saw. A young tree had appeared in the center of the exhibits. It was just barely as tall as the schoolhouse's roof, with a trunk about as wide as a metal bucket. It was a young weeping willow, and its long hanging branches and leaves draped across the nearby exhibit. The tree, however, was very unusual.
Its bark was bright yellow, and all of its leaves were a pink, frilly pink. "Oh my gosh, you did it!" Pinkie Pie's voice burst out from the crowd, drawing Rainbow Dash and Twilight out of their stupor. The two quickly raced through the network of tables and shoved their way through the crowd to reach the tree. Pinkie Pie had climbed up onto the branches, hanging off one of the few branches thick enough to support her weight. "Pinkie Pie, where the heck did this tree come from?" Rainbow asked as she took flight to catch up to Pinkie Pie in the tree's crown. "It was amazing! Nyx did it with her magic!" "Nyx did?" Twilight said as she looked up and down the tree in disbelief before her eyes narrowed. "Wait, where's Nyx?" Twilight's question was answered with a whimper that emanated from beneath one of the exhibit tables. When Twilight lifted the tablecloth, she found Nyx shaking like a leaf. Her head was in her hooves, and a few tears were pulling at her eyes. "Nyx, what did you... Twilight, I'm so sorry. I didn't want to, but Pinkie Pie kept asking, and Fluttershy said it was okay, and I'm sorry. I didn't want to do it." "Do what?" Twilight asked, still unsure what exactly happened. "She turned Fluttershy into a tree!" Pinkie Pie cheered. Wait, hold on a second," Dash began, pointing a hoof at the yellow and pink weeping willow. "This tree right here? This tree is Fluttershy?" "Well, duh! Of course it is! I just told you that Nyx turned Fluttershy into a tree. Seriously, Rainbow Dash, I think you'd be happy. After all, you were the one that thought Fluttershy was a tree when we were on our way to Appaloosa." "I did not. I was being sarcastic." Fluttershy flopped her head to one side. "You were being sarcastic?" As Rainbow Dash tried again to explain to Pinkie Pie why she had called Fluttershy a tree, Twilight began to glance nervously at the steady-growing crowd of ponies. They were all murmuring and whispering about Nyx. Nyx picked up on the growing crowd as well, and also the growing concern on Twilight's face. With another whimper, she retreated further beneath the table. I'm sorry." No, Nyx, it's okay," Twilight whispered, trying to reassure her. "Just, give me a moment." At that, Twilight turned to look at the tree, and she took in a deep breath to brace herself. After the accident during her entrance exam to Celestia's School for Gifted Unicorns, when she had turned her own parents into potted plants, one of the first spells Twilight learned had been taught by the princess was a transfiguration reversal spell. Yes, a transfiguration would wear off in time, but also important to be able to reverse the transfiguration at a moment's notice. Closing her eyes, Twilight began to focus, and her horn started to shimmer as she called on her magic. The same glow began to engulf the tree, and Rainbow Dash grabbed Pinkie Pie out of the tree's crown before Twilight completed her reversal spell. The crowd watched in awe, and the display even drew Nyx out from beneath the exhibit table. Then, after a few tense moments, the tree imploded on itself. It compressed down to a single point, and with a magical pop, Fluttershy reappeared and dropped to the ground with a small thud. "Fluttershy, are you okay?" Twilight asked. She quickly rushed up to help her friend back to her hooves. Yes?" Fluttershy said, though both her voice and her knees were shaking. I'm fine." Twilight breathed a sigh of relief. "Good. You're never in any real danger. Transfiguration magic is inherently temporary. Though, still, from what my parents told me, being turned into a plant can be a bit disorienting." "Oh, what was it like? What was it like?" Pinkie Pie asked, bouncing in excitement. "It was..." Fluttershy began, and then paused a moment to collect her thoughts. Not only did Pinkie Pie, Twilight, and Rainbow Dash lean in to hear the answer, but any ponies nearby who had witnessed the feat of magic leaned in as well. They were all eager to hear the first who've account of what it was like to be a tree. "Nice," Fluttershy finally concluded, causing a groan of disappointment to sweep through the crowd. With a lackluster climax to the small spectacle, many of the ponies in the crowd turned to leave. Pinkie Pie, however, was unfazed. "Ooh, now turn me into something. A rosebush. No, a balloon. No, turn me into a cake. Turn me into a... Wow, would you look at that? It's almost lunchtime." Twilight interrupted as she put a hoof against Pinkie Pie's mouth and forced a smile. "Personally, I'm starved. Aren't you starved, Nyx?" course you are. You just turned a pony into a tree. What kind of thing must work up an appetite? Why don't we go get something to eat? Not even waiting for an answer, Twilight grabbed Nyx with a levitation spell and galloped out of the crowd of ponies. This left Pinkie Pie, Fluttershy, and Rainbow Dash standing dumbfounded in the wake of Twilight's abrupt retreat. Ah, but I want to be a cake, Pinkie Pie whined in disappointment. Yet, she then perked up, scratching at her neck, and began to look around, as if searching for something. Dash took notice of her pink friend's sudden shift in mood. What's wrong, Pinkie Pie? Itchy neck. Itchy neck, she replied. Dash arched an eyebrow. Itchy neck? Wait, like twitchy tail? Pinkie Pie shook her head and got to her hooves as she continued to search the crowd. No, silly. Twitchy tail is when something's about to fall. Then, what does itchy neck mean? Fluttershy asked. Somebody's watching us, Pinkie Pie answered with a low hiss. Pinkie Pie? Fluttershy just got turned into a tree, Dash pointed out before waving a hoof at the crowd. Every pony is watching us? Pinkie shook her head, to side. No. That was an innocent, wow, that's a really cool thing that happened watching. No, itchy neck is a bad kind of watching. What the hey is a bad watching? Rainbow Dash questioned. Spying, Pinkie Pie hissed quietly. And a spy is that way. Without another word, Pinkie Pie was off. She galloped at a full sprint through the crowd, dodging ponies before she made a hard turn and disappeared behind a table. That left Dash and Fluttershy to anxiously glance at one another, worried about what kind of chaos Pinkie Pie was about to unleash on the